Hello, everyone, and welcome to Intentional by Shay, the space where small creators and nano influencers come to grow, thrive, and make an impact without losing themselves in the process. I'm Shay, your guide through the world of mindful marketing, authentic growth, and all the real life wins and fails that come with building your brand. Each week, we dive into strategies, stories, and practical tips that help you show up with intention, connect with your audience, and actually enjoy the process along the way. So grab your coffee, your notebook, or just grab a comfy spot on the couch, and let's get intentional. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Intentional by Shay, episode number 5. Today, we're going to be talking about something that you normally don't talk about as a small creator. Scaling your brand mindfully, having growth without the burnout. So you know that feeling when you're lying in bed at 3 a.m. Yeah, you know that feeling. And your phone is glowing beside you on the nightstand. And instead of sleeping, you're mentally scrolling through everything you didn't get done that day. The reels you didn't film, the emails sitting in your inbox like the monuments to your inadequacy, the content calendar that's supposed to be planned 2 weeks out, but is currently held together with hope and last-minute panic posts. Here's the thing that makes it even heavier. You wanted this. You built this brand, this creative space, this little corner of the internet that's finally starting to gain traction. People are actually watching your content. Brands are sliding into your DMs. Your follower count is climbing steadily. And you're getting comments from people who say your work helped them, inspired them, changed something in their day. This is what you worked for. I've been there, and I'm still navigating these waters, honestly. There are weeks when I look at my content calendar and feel this urge of excitement about what I'm building. And then there are weeks when that same calendar feels like a taskmaster that I can't escape. There are moments when a brand reaches out with an opportunity for me to test out their product in a TikTok shop and create videos for them. But then there are moments when another opportunity lands and all I can think about is, I don't have room for this. I don't want to do this. But what if I never get another chance? The push and pull of wanting to grow while also wanting to breathe, that's the tension we're sitting with today. Because here's what nobody tells you about growth. It's possible to achieve everything you wanted and still feel like you're losing yourself in the process. It's possible to hit every milestone and feel emptier with each one. It's possible to build a thriving brand that slowly becomes a cage rather than a creative playground. This episode isn't about choosing between growth and well-being. It's not another just post 3 times a week and batch your content surface level productivity hack. This is about something deeper and more essential. Learning to scale your brand in a way that expands your impact without shrinking your soul. It's about building growth strategies that are rooted in sustainability rather than extraction. It's about understanding that you are not a resource to be mined until you're empty. You're a creative human being who deserves to thrive alongside your brand. We're going to talk about what mindful scaling actually means, how to identify when growth is costing you too much, and how to build systems that support your expansion without demanding you sacrifice your sanity at the altar of more. We're going to get practical about the mechanics of sustainable growth, but we're also going to go deeper into the mindset shifts that make it possible. Because I need you to understand something very crucial. You didn't just start this journey to become a content machine. You started because you had something to say, something to share, something that mattered to you. And if your growth strategy doesn't honor that original spark, if it doesn't protect and nurture the creative energy that started this whole thing, then it's not a growth strategy. It's a burnout blueprint. So let's talk about how to grow differently, how to scale mindfully, how to expand your reach and your impact while actually becoming more connected to your purpose and not less, and how to build a brand that grows you up instead of burning you out. This is going to be a longer conversation, maybe one of our longest yet, because this topic deserves a space and depth. We're not going to rush through this. We're going to sit with it, explore it from multiple angles, and build something real together. So grab your favorite beverage, get comfy, and let's dive into one of the most important conversations we'll have about sustainable creative business. And let us begin. The first thing we need to do is get honest about what's actually happening when we talk about growth and burnout in the creator economy. Because there's a lot of noise out there, a lot of conflicting advice, which is what brought me to doing a podcast in the first place, and a lot of well-meaning experts who are essentially teaching you how to optimize your way into exhaustion of what the traditional growth advice sounds like. Maybe you've heard some version of it or all of it. Post consistently, show up every day, engage with your community, respond to every comment, collaborate with other creators, pitch brands, negotiate contracts, build your email list, create lead magnets, optimize your SEO, study your analytics, test different content formats, repurpose everything, be on multiple platforms, stay on top of trends, build a content calendar, batch your content, learn video editing, master storytelling, understand your audience, create value, be authentic, be strategic, be vulnerable, and be professional. Are you exhausted yet? Because I am. And all I did was just read the things you're supposed to be doing. Here's the fundamental problem with most growth advice. It treats you like a corporation with infinite resources rather than a human being with finite energy. It's built on the assumption that more input automatically creates more output, that you can simply optimize your way to sustainable success, that the solution to feeling overwhelmed is better time management or a more efficient workflow. But, and I do mean but, that's not how human creativity works. That's not how sustainable growth works. And that's definitely not how you build something that lasts. The burnout growth cycle starts innocently enough. Your content begins to gain traction. You notice that when you post more frequently, your engagement goes up. When you engage more in the comments, you get more followers. When you collaborate with others, you reach new audiences. These are real patterns, real feedback from the algorithm in your community. So you do what any logical person would do. You do more of what's working. Now, at first, it feels amazing. You're riding the wave of momentum. The growth is validating everything you've been working toward, right? You're getting opportunities you only dreamed of about a few months ago. Your content is resonating. People are showing up. You feel like you're finally figuring this thing out. So you push a little harder. You add another posting day. You say yes to one more collaboration. You stay up a little later to edit that reel. You wake up a little earlier to engage before your day starts. And it works. The growth continues. The validation continues. The opportunities keep coming. But here's what's also happening quietly underneath the surface. You're normalizing unsustainable effort. You're teaching yourself that this pace is what success requires. You're building your brand's foundation on a level of output that can only be maintained by continuously overriding your body's signals that you need rest. You're mistaking adrenaline and anxiety for passion and drive. And then, inevitably, something starts to crack. Maybe it's your sleep. Maybe it's your relationships. Maybe it's your physical health. The headaches, the digestive issues, the constant low-grade exhaustion that no amount of coffee can touch. Maybe it's your creative joy. You sit down to create and feel nothing but dread and obligation. This, my friend, is the burnout growth cycle, and it's by design. And this is what happened to me. When I initially started my journey into content creating, I did exactly that. I was posting every day. I was showing up every day. I was engaging with my community. I was up on live every day. I was creating content every day. I was on go every single day. And I was exhausted. I was tired. But guess what? My numbers were climbing. My engagement went up. And it was great. But then once again, I started to burn out. And just like I said, this burnout growth cycle, it's literally by design. The platforms we're building on are literally engineered to extract maximum content from creators. The algorithms reward consistency and frequency because that keeps users scrolling, which keeps advertisers happy, and which keeps the platform profitable. Your well being is not a part of that equation. Your sustainability is not a metric they measure. Now, before you think I'm about to tell you to rage quit social media and become a digital hermit, I'm not. I'm not anti platform and I'm not anti growth, but I am deeply, fundamentally opposed to building your brand on a foundation that requires you to slowly destroy yourself. Because once again, it was happening to me. I'm speaking from inside this tension, not from some place of having figured it all out. There are still weeks when I catch myself slipping back into unsustainable patterns. Just last month, I realized I was doing too much and I was checking my analytics too much, and I was not maintaining my schedule. And by the time the end of the week happened, my body was telling me to slow down, and my brain was telling me I couldn't afford to go on. That moment of recognizing the pattern, that's where the real work begins. Not in having all the answers, but in being willing to notice when you're operating from scarcity instead of intention, and being willing to ask yourself the uncomfortable questions about what you're actually building and why. Here's what I've started to understand through my own trial and error. The traditional growth model is built on scarcity thinking. It tells you that opportunities are limited, that you need to grab everything that comes your way, and if you're not constantly producing, someone else will take your place. It tells you that your worth as a creator is directly tied to your output, your engagement rate, your follower count. It tells you that rest is a luxury you can afford once you've made it. But it never defines what made it actually looks like. So you just keep pushing towards a finish line that keeps moving. This model doesn't account for the fact that you're a human being, yes, a human being with a nervous system that needs regulation. It doesn't account for creative cycles, for seasonality, for the reality that inspiration isn't a tap you can turn on and off at will. It doesn't account for the fact that your best work, your most resonant content, your most authentic voice, all of these emerge from a place of spaciousness, not scarcity. And here's the really insidious part. When you inevitably hit a wall, when your body and mind finally say no more, the same system that pushed you to this point will tell you it's a personal failing. You'll see other creators who seem to be thriving at that pace, and you'll think there's something wrong with you. You'll think you're not disciplined enough, not passionate enough, and you're not cut out for this. But what if the system is the problem and not you? What if sustainable growth isn't about finding ways to do more, but about being intentional about what you do and why you're doing it? What if scaling mindfully means getting really clear about what success actually means to you rather than chasing metrics that someone else defined? I want to introduce you to a different framework of thinking about growth, one that puts your humanity at the center rather than treating it as an obstacle to overcome. This framework is built on three core principles, and we're going to explore each one of them in depth. The first principle is your energy is not renewable within a single day. You cannot push through exhaustion indefinitely. You cannot consistently override your need for rest and expect your creativity, your health, or your passion to remain intact. Growth strategies that depend on you operating at maximum capacity at all times are fundamentally unstable, which means they're not actually growth strategies. They're extraction strategies. Think about your energy like a bank account. Traditional growth advice tells you to spend, 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 post more, engage more, create more. It promises that if you spend enough, eventually you'll make a withdrawal that changes everything. But it never talks about deposits. It never talks about how you're supposed to replenish what you're spending. It assumes the account is infinite. But you know it's not. You've felt what happens when that account runs dry. You've experienced the particular emptiness of sitting down to create when you have nothing left to give. You felt the dread that places excitement, the obligation that replaces inspiration. Sustainable growth requires you to think like a good steward of your energy, not an exploiter of it. It requires you to ask not just how much can I produce, but how much can I produce while also replenishing my creative reserves. It requires you to build rest, spaciousness, and play into your strategy from the beginning, not as things you'll add later when you have time. The second principle is this: not all growth is good growth. And I must say that one more time for the people in the back that can't hear. Not all growth is good growth. Okay? We live in a culture that treats expansion as an inherent good, where more is always better than enough. But growth that disconnects you from your purpose isn't success, it's drift. Growth that alienates you from your original creative vision isn't achievement, it's compromise. Growth that attracts an audience that doesn't align with your values might boost your numbers, but it won't build a sustainable community. I've experienced this firsthand. There have been periods where I experimented with different content styles, trying out trends, testing formats that were performing well for others, creating content that I thought would appeal to a broader audience. And you know what? Some of it worked. My reach expanded during those periods and I got more views, more new followers, but then something felt off. The comments were more surface level. The engagement, while higher in quantity, felt lower in quality. I was reaching more people, but connecting with fewer of them on a meaningful level. And here's the part that really got to me. I started to dread creating. The content that was performing well wasn't content that I felt excited about. It was content that I was making because the data told me it worked, not because it reflected what I actually wanted to say. That's when I realized that growth without alignment is just noise. You can expand your reach infinitely, but if you're not speaking to the right people about the things that actually matter to you, you're building on sand. You're creating a community that's interested in your performance, not your perspective. And when you inevitably get tired of performing, because you will, those people won't stick around. And the third principle is this: sustainable scaling requires systems, not heroics. You cannot willpower your way to sustainable growth. You cannot rely on motivation and discipline to carry you through indefinitely. What you need are systems and structures that support your creative practice even when, especially when, you're not feeling inspired or energized. And I want to be clear about what I mean by systems here. I'm not talking about complicated productivity frameworks or elaborate content management platforms. I'm talking about simple, repeatable structures that remove decision fatigue and create consistency without requiring constant effort. Think about it this way: brushing your teeth is a system. You don't wake up every morning and debate whether you're going to brush your teeth. You don't wait until you feel motivated to do it. You don't rely on inspiration or discipline. You just do it because it's an established pattern, a structure that's so integrated into your routine that it barely requires conscious thought. That's what we're aiming for with your content creation and brand growth. Not mindless automation, but thoughtful systems that create a foundation of consistency so that your creativity can be focused on the work itself, not on managing the chaos of unstructured process. Most creators that I've talked to, and I include myself in this, are running their brands on heroics. We're constantly scrambling, constantly pulling rabbits out of hats, constantly relying on last minute bursts of creativity and energy to meet our commitments. And that works until it doesn't. It works until you're sick or dealing with a personal crisis or simply exhausted beyond what willpower can overcome. Systems are what allow you to maintain presence and consistency even during the seasons when you don't have extra to give. They're what creates sustainability. They're what transforms growth from a sprint into a marathon you can actually finish. Those are the three core principles: energy management over energy exploitation, aligned growth over growth for growth's sake, and systems over heroics. These principles are going to guide everything else we talk about in this episode. They're the foundation for mindful scaling. Now, I want to pause here and acknowledge something important. If you're reading these principles and feeling a sense of relief, that's fantastic. But if you're feeling a sense of overwhelm, like this is yet another framework you need to learn, another set of standards you're not meeting, I want you to understand that this isn't about adding more to your plate or mine. This is about examining what's already on your plate and asking whether it's actually nourishing you. This is about permission to do less, to do it more intentionally, and to build something that actually sustains you while it grows. You don't have to overhaul your entire approach overnight. You don't have to implement every idea we discuss in this episode immediately. You don't have to be perfect at this, because I'm certainly not. But what matters is this: you're here. You're willing to question the dominant narratives about growth, and you're open to building something different. Because here's what I believe with my whole heart, and I mean this. The creator economy needs more people who are willing to grow sustainably, to build brands that reflect their actual values and capacity to resist the pressure of constantly producing at the expense of their humanity. The creator economy needs you to stick around for the long haul. And you can't do that if you're burning yourself out in the first few years, or the first few months, or the first few weeks. So let's keep this going. Let's get into the practical side of what mindful scaling actually looks like, step by step, decision by decision, and day by day. So before we can talk about building sustainable systems for growth, we need to get brutally honest about what's happening right now in your brand. And I do mean brutally. This isn't going to be a gentle exercise where we gloss over the uncomfortable parts. This is where we look directly at the things that are quietly draining you, the commitments that no longer serve you, the patterns that are keeping you stuck in the burnout cycle. Most of us avoid this kind of audit because we're afraid of what we'll find. We're afraid we'll realize we've been wasting time on things that don't matter. We're afraid we'll have to admit that some of the opportunities we fought so hard to get are actually making our lives harder and not better. We're afraid we'll discover that we've built something we don't actually want to maintain or even like. But here's the truth. You can't change what you don't acknowledge. You can't build something sustainable on top of a foundation that's actively crumbling. And you can't make intentional decisions about your growth if you're not willing to look honestly at where you're starting from. So we're going to do this together. I'm going to walk you through the same audit process I use with myself regularly. This is sometimes more often when I'm feeling particularly stretched or disconnected from my work. Now, this isn't a one-time thing. This is a practice, a regular check-in with yourself about whether your brand is still aligned with your capacity and your purpose. So first, we're going to map your actual energy flow. Not how you think it should work, not how you wish it would work, but how it actually works in your real life right now. So get out a piece of paper or open a note on your phone. I want you to list every single thing you do for your brand on a regular basis. And I do mean everything. Don't just list the big stuff, like create content or engage with followers. Get specific and break it down. Here's a few examples. Check Instagram notifications first thing in the morning, respond to DMs, brainstorm content ideas, write out captions, film content, edit videos, choose music and effects, write hooks and calls to actions, schedule posts, engage with other creators' content, comment on posts in your niche, research trending audio, monitor analytics, update calendar for your content, respond to brand emails, negotiate collaboration terms, draft contracts or proposals, create collaboration content, send invoices, track payments, plan future collaborations, research your niche, learn new platform features, and take courses or consume educational content about growth. Now, your list may be longer or shorter, but I want you to be thorough. This is your actual workload, the full scope of what you're managing. Now, here's the crucial part. Go through that list and mark each item with one of three symbols. Plus sign. Put a plus sign next to the things that energize you. That when you do it, you feel more alive, more creative, more connected to why you started your brand in the first place. Even if it takes effort, it fills you up more than it drains you. The equal sign, this is your neutral territory. Now, it doesn't particularly excite you, but it doesn't drain you either. It's just something that needs to happen, and you can do it without much emotional cost. The minus sign. When you think about doing this task, you feel a sense of dread or resistance. And when you finish it, you feel more tired than you did before you even started. And it costs more than it gives back. I want you to be honest, painfully honest. Now, this is just for you. No one else needs to see this. Give yourself permission to admit which parts of your brand building work are actually draining you, even if they're things you should enjoy or things that other creators seem to love. When I did this exercise myself some time ago, I was shocked by what I discovered. Some tasks I assumed were energizing for me were actually marked with minus signs. Engaging in comments, which I'd always thought of as one of my favorite parts of building community, had become exhausting. And I'd turned it into an obligation. And I felt like I had to respond to every single comment within a certain time frame, which meant I was checking my phone compulsively and never fully present anywhere else. Now, on the flip side, some tasks I've been procrastinating on and feeling guilty about, like updating my media kit, were actually neutral tasks. They weren't draining me. I was just avoiding them because I'd built them up into something bigger than they were. Now, once you have your list marked, look at your minus signs. These are your energy drains, the places where your brand is actively depleting you. Now, I want you to ask yourself 3 questions about each minus sign item. Question 1, is this actually necessary? We do a lot of things because we think we're supposed to, because we saw another creator doing it, because some growth guru said it was essential. But is it really? For example, do you actually need to be on 4 different platforms, or are you spreading yourself thin, trying to be everywhere at once? Do you need to post every single day? Or is that frequency something you adopted because you thought it was required? Do you need to respond to every single comment immediately? Or have you created an unsustainable standard that's making engagement feel like a chore? Sometimes the answer will be yes, this is necessary. But often, and more often than you might expect, the answer is no, or at least not in the way you're currently doing it. Question number 2, could this be done differently? Now, maybe the task is necessary, but the way you're approaching it is what's making it draining. Could you batch it? Could you simplify it? Could you set different boundaries around it? Let's say responding to DMs is draining you. The task itself is probably necessary. Community connection is important, but maybe the drain is coming from the fact that you're responding throughout the day every time a notification comes through, which means you never fully disconnect. But what if you set a specific time for checking and responding to DMs instead? What if you gave yourself permission to take longer to respond or not to respond to every single message? Or let's say planning is marked with a minus sign. Maybe the issue isn't the planning itself, but the fact that you're trying to plan in a way that doesn't match how your brain works. Maybe you've been trying to use elaborate content calendars and spreadsheets when you actually think better with a simple list or a voice note to yourself. And question number 3, can this be eliminated, delegated, or automated? Some tasks genuinely don't need to be done by you or don't need to be done at all. This is where we start looking at what you can release. Elimination is the most powerful option. If something isn't necessary and can't be reframed in a way that makes it less draining, please stop doing it. Give yourself permission to just stop. Yes, even if you've been doing it for months. Yes, even if other creators are still doing it. Your brand is yours to shape. Delegation is the next option. Is there anything on your minus sign list that someone else could do? And before you tell me you can't afford to hire help, let's get creative about this. Could you do a skill swap with another creator? You do something you're good at for them, they do something they're good at for you. Could you bring on an intern who wants to learn from you? Could you involve a partner or a friend who's been asking how they can support your business? I know delegation feels impossible when you're a small creator with a limited budget, but I also know that continuing to do everything yourself when some of those things are actively burning you out is also impossible. Something has to give, and it's worth at least exploring what delegation might look like on a small scale. And automation is the third option, and this is where simple systems come in. What on your list can be automated or semi-automated with the right tools or processes? Maybe you could use scheduling tools so you're not manually posting everything. Maybe you could create templates for common types of content so you're not starting from scratch every single time. Maybe you could set up saved replies for FAQs you get in your DMs. The goal here isn't to turn your brand into a soulless automated machine. The goal is to automate the repetitive, low creativity tasks so you can have more energy for the high creativity, high connection work that only you can do. Now we're going to look at the plus signs, the things that energize you. This is equally important because your sustainable growth strategy needs to be built around these energy giving activities, not in spite of them. So look at your plus sign items. What patterns do you notice? What is it about these tasks that fills you up? Maybe you notice that you're energized by the creative process, filming, writing, brainstorming, but drained by the admin side. And let me tell you, I know I am. Or maybe it's the opposite. Maybe you love the strategy and planning, but the actual creation is exhausting. Maybe you're energized by deep conversation in DMs, but drained by performative commenting on other people's posts. There's no right or wrong answer here. What matters is that you're identifying where your natural energy lives within your brand work. Now, here's the question that's going to shape your entire growth strategy moving forward. How can you build a brand that maximizes your plus sign activities and minimizes your minus sign activities? This is the core of mindful scaling. We're not asking, how can I do more? We're asking, how can I do more of what actually lights me up and less of what depletes me? We're not trying to overcome your natural energy patterns, but we're trying to work with them. For me, I discovered that I'm deeply energized by long form content creation because I am a long-winded talker, okay? This is why I'm doing podcasts. But writing these podcast episodes, creating in-depth resources, having substantial conversations, I love it. I absolutely love it. But I'm drained by the constant scattered energy of trying to show up on multiple platforms with bite-sized content every single day. That realization completely shifted my strategy. Instead of trying to force myself to be a good multi-platform creator, I leaned into what energized me and built my approach around that. Meaning, I was not doing everyday bite-sized content, but I created a sustainable schedule that works for me so that way I can show up and have my rest days in between. Your version of this will look different because your energy patterns are different. And that's exactly the point. Sustainable growth isn't about following a universal template. It's about understanding yourself well enough to build something that works with your actual wiring and not against it. Now, the third part of this audit is looking at your content commitment and upcoming opportunities through a new lens. Because one of the biggest energy drains for creators isn't the regular daily work, it's the opportunities you say yes to that don't actually serve you. We're taught that we are to treat every opportunity as precious, to say yes to everything because you never know where it might lead. But this is scarcity thinking, masquerading as ambition. The truth is that saying yes to the wrong opportunities doesn't just fail to move you forward, it actively holds you back by consuming time and energy you could have invested in aligned work. So let's create an opportunity filter. This is a set of questions you're going to ask yourself every single time something new comes across your path. A collaboration, a brand deal, a speaking opportunity, a new platform to try, whatever it is. So the question you want to ask first is, does this align with my core brand message and values? Not, could I make this work? Or could I find a way to justify this? But does this genuinely fit with what you're building and what you stand for? If you have to contort yourself to make something fit, that's a red flag. And we don't do red flags over here, okay? Question number 2 is, does this energize me or obligate me? When you think about this opportunity, what's your gut response? Is there a sense of, oh, this could be interesting? Or is it more, I guess I could do this? Your initial reaction matters. If your first feeling is obligation rather than interest, that's important information for you to take note of. Question number 3, do I have the actual capacity for this right now? not theoretical capacity, not if I just hustled a little harder capacity, actual, real, honest to goodness capacity based on your current life and energy levels. What would you have to sacrifice or defer to make room for this? Is that sacrifice worth it? And question number 4, what's my honest motivation for wanting to say yes? Are you saying yes because this genuinely serves your brand growth and aligns with your goals? Or are you saying yes because you're afraid of missing out, afraid of seeming ungrateful, afraid that opportunities won't come again, afraid of what other people will think if you turn this down? Fear-based yeses are almost always mistakes. They're how you end up with a brand full of commitments you resent. Question number 5. What is this opportunity costing me? Every yes is also a no to something else. What are you not doing, not creating, not experiencing because you're saying yes to this? Sometimes the cost is worth it, but oftentimes when we actually name the cost, we realize it's too high. I want you to write these questions down somewhere you'll see them regularly. Put them in your phone notes, tape them to your laptop, make them your lock screen. Because in the moment when an opportunity arrives, especially if it's something you've been waiting or wanting, if it comes from someone you admire, it's incredibly hard to think clearly. Having your filter questions ready means you don't have to rely on in the moment clarity. And here's something I need you to hear. It's okay to say no. I promise you, it's okay to say no. It's okay to say this doesn't fit my brand right now. It's okay to say I don't have the capacity for this. It's okay to say this sounds amazing, but it is not aligned with where I'm headed. It's okay to turn down opportunities that other creators would kill for if those opportunities don't serve you. Saying no to the wrong things is how you create space to say yes to the right things. The final part of this audit is the hardest, and it's one most people skip because it requires admitting things we don't want to admit. Now, I want you to ask yourself these questions, and I want you to answer them with complete honesty. Don't perform your answers. Don't answer the way you think you should or the way that makes you sound most committed or most professional. Answer from the truth of your actual experience. Question 1. When was the last time you created something purely because you wanted to, not because it served a strategy? Question 2. How many times in the past month have you felt genuine excitement about your content versus obligated to post? Question 3. When you think about your brand 6 months from now, does the vision you have energize you or exhaust you? Question 4. If you could rebuild your brand from scratch with no pressure to maintain what you've already built, what would you do differently? And question number 5. What are you doing right now that you know isn't sustainable, but you're doing it anyway? These questions hurt. I know they do. They hurt when I ask them of myself too. But this pain is actually useful. It's the pain of cognitive dissonance, the discomfort that arises when your actions don't match your values or your capacity. And here's what I want you to understand. Feeling this discomfort doesn't mean you failed. It doesn't mean you've been doing everything wrong. It means you're human. And you've been operating in a system that wasn't designed with your sustainability in mind. It means you're ready to do something different. The audit we just did together, this is your starting point. This is your baseline. You can't build a sustainable growth strategy without knowing where you actually are right now, beneath all the performance and productivity theater. So now you have a map of your energy, a clear picture of what drains you and what fills you, a filter for opportunities, and an honest assessment of where there's misalignment between what you're doing and what you actually want to be building. This is the foundation. Everything we build from here is going to be in service of creating more plus signs and fewer minus signs, more alignment and less performance, more sustainability and less hustle. Let's keep going. Now that we have built our foundation, let's build something new. Now that you know where you're starting from, now that you've identified what's working and what's draining you, we can construct a growth framework that actually serves you instead of consuming you. So I'm going to share what I call the core four fundamental pillars that support sustainable growth. Now, these aren't tactics or hacks. These are structural elements that need to be in place for your brand to scale in a way that doesn't burn you out. And I'm going to be specific about what each one looks like in practice because concepts are useless without application. Pillar number 1, your non-negotiable boundaries. Let's start with the pillar that most creators resist the most, boundaries. We resist boundaries because we've been taught that there are limitations, that they make us less flexible, less available, less committed. We resist boundaries because we're afraid that if we set them, opportunities will just pass us by. But here's what I've learned. Boundaries aren't limitations. Boundaries are the container that makes sustainable work possible. Without boundaries, your creative work bleeds into every single corner of your life until there's no separation between you and your brand, until you've lost the space you need to be a full human being. So your non-negotiable boundaries are the rules you set for how you interact with your brand work. These are rules that you commit to honoring even when it's inconvenient, even when you're tempted to break them, and even when an exciting opportunity comes along that will require you to bend them. Let me give you some examples of what non-negotiable boundaries might look like. I don't check social media before 9 a.m. or after 7 p.m. I don't work on content on Saturdays. I respond to DMs within 48 hours, not immediately. I post 3 times per week, not daily. I take 1 full week off every quarter with 0 content creation. I don't take on more than 2 brand collaborations per month. And I don't create content about topics just because they're trending if they don't align with my core message. Now, you notice that these are specific, concrete, and actionable. They're not vague intentions like, I'll try to take breaks, or I should probably get some more rest. No, these are clear lines that you can actually follow. Your non-negotiable boundaries need to be based on your actual capacity and your actual values. They can't be based on what you think you should be able to handle or what other creators seem to be able to handle or what the growth gurus says is necessary for success. And here's how to establish your non-negotiables. I want you to start by looking back at your energy inventory from the audit. Where are you most depleted? What patterns of work are contributing to that depletion? Your boundaries need to directly address those drain points. Then I want you to ask yourself, what would need to be true about how I work for me to still feel like myself 6 months from now? What would need to be protected? Maybe it's your morning routine, the hour before your day starts where you drink your coffee slowly and don't look at your phone. Maybe it's your weekends, the 2 days where you're a person, not a brand. Maybe it's your creative process, the freedom to make something without immediately thinking about how it will perform. Whatever it is, name it, be specific, and then, this is the crucial part, treat these boundaries as non-negotiable. Not, I'll try to honor these, but these are the foundation of my sustainable practice and I will not compromise them. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're probably thinking, but what if an amazing opportunity comes up that conflicts with my boundary? And here's what I'm going to tell you. If an opportunity requires you to violate your non-negotiables, it's not actually an amazing opportunity for you. Now, it might be amazing for someone else with different boundaries and different capacity, but for you in your actual life, with your actual energy, it's going to cost you too much. This is hard to internalize because we're so conditioned to see flexibility as a virtue and boundaries as selfish. But I need you to understand something. Your boundaries are not about being inflexible or difficult or even uncommitted. Your boundaries are about honoring the reality that you are a human being with limits, and that ignoring those limits doesn't make you more successful. It makes you more depleted. When I first started setting real boundaries around my work, I was terrified. I was convinced that brands wouldn't want to work with me if I wasn't available on their timeline. I was convinced that my audience would forget about me if I took breaks. I was convinced that other creators would pass me by if I wasn't constantly hustling. But you know what? The brands respected my boundaries. My audience didn't forget about me. They actually engaged more deeply when I showed up because I was showing up from a place of fullness rather than obligation. And yes, while some creators did grow faster than me, many of them also burned out. Yet, here I am. I'm still here. So your non-negotiable boundaries are your protection against the extraction economy. They're how you stay in this for the long haul. So I want you to sit down, write out your non-negotiables, start with about 3 to 5. You can add more later, but begin with the ones that feel most essential to your well-being. Write them down, say them out loud, share them with someone you trust. Make them real and concrete, because boundaries that exist only in your head are too easy to negotiate with yourself about in moments of stress and opportunity. Pillar number 2, your signature system. The second pillar of sustainable growth is what I call your signature system. The unique way you create your content and you share your content that works with your natural rhythms and strengths rather than against them. Now, most creators, they don't even have this system. They have a chaotic collection of habits that they've cobbled together from different advice sources, and they're constantly second guessing whether they're doing it right. This creates enormous amounts of decision fatigue and makes every content creation session feel like you're starting from scratch. Your signature system is the opposite of that. It's a repeatable process that you've designed specifically for how your brain and energy actually works. It removes the guesswork and creates a foundation of consistency that doesn't require you to be constantly motivated or inspired. Now, here's what a signature system includes. 1, your content pillars. These are the 3 to 5 core themes that your content revolves around. Not a different topic every day, not whatever's trending, but consistent themes that align with your brand message and expertise. Having content pillars means you're not constantly asking yourself, what should I talk about today? You already know. You're just deciding which pillar you want to explore this time around. For my brand, my content pillars are mindful marketing strategies, sustainable creative practices, intentional brand building, and authentic community connection. Everything I create falls under these umbrellas. This doesn't make my content repetitive. Each pillar has its infinite depth and endless goals, but it does create coherence and it makes content planning infinitely easier. So, what are your 3 to 5 core themes? What are the topics you could talk about endlessly that align with both your expertise and your passion? Those are your content pillars. What an episode! This concludes part 1 of episode 5, Scaling Your Brand Mindfully and Having Growth Without the Burnout. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm pretty sure you're overwhelmed with all the information that you received. So I want you to take this time to really let this marinate with you. Think about all the pillars, all the things we've talked about, all the different strategies and techniques that you can use to scale your brand and your business in a way that doesn't leave you tired, burnt out, and completely fatigued from creating. Next week, we will pick up where we left off with pillar number 3, your creation rhythm. And this is when and how you actually create content based on your real life and energy patterns. Thank you so much for joining me for part 1 of episode 5. And I look forward to seeing you next week in episode number 5, part 2.